People keep asking me, Diego, what is it exactly what you do? They ask this like every other month or so, and I still didn't find the good way to explain it. So today I'll try something else. They say what we are and the way we think depends basically on our nature, our DNA, and our nurture, the experiences we have and how we face it, especially the experiences we have in our early childhood. So I figured to explain what I do and why I do it, I'll tell you 3 important things about my childhood. First one is a nightmare. The second one is something I just didn't understand. And the third one is something I loved. So for over 4 years, I had the same dream. I dream about an array of synchronized kids shouted at by a teacher in a production lane about to be hashed in like the meat. And I had that dream for over 4 years, until I was 8 years old. And I suddenly watched a video on TV. It was a music video, The Wall, by Pink Floyd. The next thing was this sentence. When you grow old, you'll probably work on something that is not yet invented. I love this thing. So I could invent my job. I could work on something completely new. And I knew what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a creative improver. So great, and although nobody really seemed to understand what I was doing about, I went on with my dream. And I created a lab for applied creativity. This is the other thing. Success is to work on what you enjoy most. How many of you agree with this? Okay, plenty. Well, I didn't at the time because I thought everybody did already. So I went out with my dream and I founded the lab for applied creativity. And we work on architecture. We do art installations, in part thanks to Hector's job, and we do design thinking. So today I want to focus on the design thinking process. And more specifically, I want to focus on the methodology and the tools we designed for a very important client of ours, the Television of Catalonia. So this is the name we gave the tool, Zoom Minds for Co-Design. But first, let me frame what we saw there at first. So Television from Catalonia was affected by a lack of motivation. The former prestige was going down, and they figured they were facing structural changes. So they wanted to start by the image department, but when they were about to hire the typical consultancy, they knew about the Dissonantias program. The Dissonantias program is an international program trying to promote collaboration among artists and companies. And the idea of incorporating a creative mediator to the process within the department sounded appealing to them, and I was all excited about the challenge. So I ended up working with them for over 10 months. But as I got there, I understood their expectations were astronomical. They wanted a mind shift. They wanted to reverse the situation at the TV, to improve performance, and they were asking me to develop a methodology for that change. And I was like, hey, easy on me, this is heavy duty, and I'm an artist. And they would say, no, you're no artist, you're an architect. We got plenty of artists here, so get to work. And so I did. In a quick research, I found that Television of Catalonia started their first emission some 30 years ago, with plenty of high-skilled and motivated young people. For many years, the department was leading the sector, with great animations and designs. But time passed by and things changed. Projects became more complex, and communication less fluent. Plus, you can imagine, being all officers, staff grew older, and technologies changed completely too. The old way wasn't working anymore. They never updated their routines or the way they worked. They used to have one person deciding for everybody who was everybody else going to be doing. And again, that wasn't working. Plus, many of them were pure artists, so they were used to work individually and to sign individually for the projects. That was a big issue for them, and it'll be a big issue for later because we're trying to promote cooperation. They didn't cooperate, so projects were expensive and slower. In the meantime, highly specialized agencies were growing, popping all the way around. So competence was really high, and the externalization of projects was a constant risk. And so the department wasn't that admired anymore. They got isolated from the rest of the TV. So you can imagine the motivation went down, and so did their performance. So this was the big thing. They were asking me to stimulate the internal debate, to question their routines, to help them visualize the change, to empower them for that change. And ultimately, they wanted results. They wanted me to make the change happen. But how? Look at my face here. I was frightened. I figured I have 10 sessions for an individual and a collective mind shift, and I didn't even know if it was possible. So, to gain some time, we started with the typical things. We figured, okay, we have to question everything from the very beginning to the very end. So we're going to need a big picture. We're going to need an overall picture of it. So we started with a diagnose. We did with directives. We tried to understand in just a spreadsheet everything that was going on. We call it the big picture, and although it's a spreadsheet, it helped us frame the proposals that we were going to work on. So we'll start by the people. We'll go all the way through the organization, and we'll end up with a relationship with their internal clients. So from the beginning to the end, starting by the people. So we did start by the people. We started with the typical cross interviews. We were asking them about their childhood, their motivations, about their frustrations, about the opportunities they saw, about their interest. And after that, we asked them to draw a picture of the conclusions of the interviews they've done. But we asked them to do two pictures. One representing the actual mood they saw in the person they had interviewed, and the other one representing their highest potential. So it would be like the superhero version of the avatar. These came out very well there, because they were very skilled and creative people. This is how Ivan saw Laura at the point. And this is a superhero version of Laura. I love it. So many people did pictures, many did songs, many did videos, and Laura in return gave Ivan a lamp. So look at the message here. You are a light on the darkness, you are my light. And this is the superhero version of the lamp. So again, this really came out well. We had plenty of avatars, very different, and the superhero version of the avatars. And although it was a simple and easy idea, it helped me understand, get to know them a little more. So with these avatars became presents, and these helped us create the right mood, the right climate to start with. But the right climate wasn't enough. They wanted much more than the right climate. They wanted tangible results. So we were going to need more than that. We're going to need their attention, their respect, their trust, and their motivation. And that was pretty difficult, especially because we had to talk to creatives about creativity. So we're going to need a completely new approach. And we needed them to imagine change. We need them to visualize change. So we would need a visualizing tool. That should be easy there. But we'll also need a complete concept to wrap the whole thing up. But how do we do that? That was a big question. And I figured I'll just sleep over it and take some time, try to find inspiration somewhere else, and go back to my other activities. At the time, I was doing a domestic research on creativity. I was going nuts with Antonio Damasio and Sebastian Jung's hypothesis on how the brain works. They were trying to understand the creative brain. I was trying to understand how my mind works too, to try to communicate. I wanted to see it. I wanted to understand it, or at least have a personal understanding of it. So I'm going to share some of the quick pills that I found. Imagine your brain, where most of you happens. Your instincts, your feelings, your emotions, your ideas, your memories, your creativity, your imagination, your fears, everything's in here. As I said before, our brain is shaped by our DNA, by our nature, and our nurture, the experiences we have and how we face them. But I like to add to the equation the need, because the need is related to the motivation. And the motivation is the tool that allows us to be creative. To be creative, to adapt to the changes. To be creative, to understand things. And to be creative, to make those changes. So we're going to look for motivation in here. We're going to zoom a little deeper now. These are the neurons, the building blocks of your brain. Each of you has 100 billion neurons. That's plenty. But which is more surprising to me is the fact that each neuron is connected to over 50,000 other neurons through the dendrites and the axons, created an intricate neuroforest of connections. These connections grow as we learn and disappear as we forget. Simplifying. And what makes us the way we are, what makes us think the way we think, is the way they are connected. It's pretty much like the atom-carbon example. Depending on how you connect the atoms, you either get choke or a diamond. So properties depend on connections, just like in the brain. They say after 10,000 hours doing the same thing, you become an expert. And you do because the neural pathways for that specific activity is consolidated, is strong. So it somehow becomes a highway, which is really good for routinary thinking, but not for creative thinking. For creative thinking, you'll have to step off of the highway. You'll have to forget somehow. Now, neurosciences are helping us to understand, to visualize what's going on those connections. For instance, this is the homunculus. It's a visualization of the amount of resources the brain dedicates to each part of the body. So if you put them all together, you get this monster. So it's pretty much like an image that the brain has of yourself. But things are getting much more interesting, much more sophisticated. Now they're trying to visualize the neural pathways of your brain. That is the way you think. The discipline is called connectomics. And what you're doing is try to follow a thought through your brain, right? So they're trying to visualize the way you think. That is nuts. So a specific thought would be like spaghetti. And your whole mind will be like a spaghetti ball in your head. So to understand, to follow a specific thought, you just have to follow a specific spaghetti. I think that is crazy. So maybe we could end up understanding a little more of what's going on in our head. Maybe we could even understand creativity. What about creativity? We knew, because we often define it that way, that creativity is about connecting the dots. And now we know, too, is about stepping off the highway to find new ways of thinking. But what motivates those new ways of thinking? What is the motivation? I'll tell you, it's usually not money. More likely, it's a chemical reward called the dopamine. So when we're being creative, we're motivating by a desire of a dopamine high in your brain. It's that desire that makes us think different, think in a new ways, look for new connections. So maybe we can end up changing our minds, because we know that our minds can change. Neuroplasticity tells us that the brain has the ability to adapt to changes. So maybe we could, after all, this mind shift is possible. Okay. So how do we apply all this that we've learned to our specific duty? Okay, we needed a creative approach, a new creative approach. We had it. We need a game for visualization. Okay, we'll just go on with the analogy. We're going to say the brain is the department, and we're going to try to trace the connectome and the homunculus, and to see how connections are, rotatory connections, and to try to visualize the new connections. So the brain was going to be the department. The neuron will be a person, and the axon and the dendrites, the connections, will be the connections within the department. That is the way they work, the way they would like to work, their interests, their skills, and their motivations. But let me remind you first what our goals were. We asked them to imagine the best possible department, and from there go backwards. We asked them to question their routines. We asked them to forget those routines. And since that was pretty difficult, we did some kind of a master's, instead of an MBA, an MDA, a master for forgetting. Because we wanted them to forget, to question their structures, to get empowered, to empower people. And for that, we wanted a shift from individual to collective, from ego design to co-design. So for that, we did a campaign for extreme collaboration. So the strategy was pretty clear, but still there was something missing. There was something that we needed to overlay. The guru suggested success is to work on what you enjoy most. So motivation is key. All right, maybe we can then look for a tool for them to be much more motivated, to decide what they want to work on. That was the beginning of the ZoomMind tools. So we started tracing the homunculus, paying special attention to the departments that we were going to work with, and looking at the dedicated resources in the TV. So we go to the graphic design, and we'll see their profiles, and we'll see the staff, and we'll see the kind of different projects that they're normally involved in. Okay, this was cool. This was the homunculus, and it was interesting, but we wanted to trace the connectome. So if we had to trace the connectome, we had to go deeper, much deeper into it, into the people, into the neuron, to see how they are connected. And so we did. So we made a simple game of visualization. One person was going to be one neuron, and they were going to be connected to all the people in the department with 5 kind of connections. I usually work together. I would like to work with you. I value this or that from you. I think you're fit for this position, or we share interest. So 5 different kind of connectors. And for each kind of connector, for each color, we'll have 2 kind of connections. The strong connections, the consolidated connections, and the small connections. So the game was pretty simple. I will start giving away the connectors to others and receiving the connectors from others. And in that way, I'll be tracing my personal neuron. So this will be the representation of the way I used to work and the way I would like to work, the people I like to work with. This one would be the representation of my interest. And as you see, the other people, the people I change the connectors with, do the same thing. So now we have the individual connectors, the spaghetti that goes through my very neuron. But we want to trace the whole spaghetti ball. We want to trace the whole connectome. So what we'll do is we'll put them all together. So with these, we'll have common maps. Common maps that would tell us a lot of information about the department. And now, this is about the routinary work and the way they would like to work. And this other one is about the potential within the department, the professional development they could have in there. So now let's interpret this graph. Imagine now we have a project, an incoming project, a new project that is related to animation, to 3D, to news, to music, and to learning. So we can now enter this map and find the people that match these requirements more often. And this way we'll have a possible team. For animation, we'll have Ivan and Andres and Pep. For 3D, we have Ivan again. For news, we have Angels. For music, we have Eva and Francesc. For learning, we have Ramon and Rafael. Okay, now we can take this possible team and contrast it with another map. For instance, let's contrast it with a map of desired collaborations to see who wants to work with whom. So we'll know they're interested in the matter and they want to work together. And we find all the people that want to work with Ivan: Pep, Andres, Angels, Eva, Ramon, and Rafael. These people will be skilled people and motivated people. Plus, there will be people that want to work together. So these will probably be the best team for one project, or at least the most motivated, which I think for creativity is the most important thing. So here they are. We did plenty of other things. We did plenty of maps. And many things within the framework. I would say many of them were just as important as this. But that's another story, and my time is up. Thank you very much.